We are going to talk about how to acquire the right information and what are primary, secondary, and tertiary sources and when do you use them. There are three source types to consider when reviewing literature and conducting your own research. These three source types are primary sources, secondary sources, and tertiary sources. The distinction between these resource types depends on the originality of the information being communicated and the proximity to the original source of information. In sciences and biomedical fields, research findings are shared and communicated formally through presentations at conferences or published in journals, reports, or conference proceedings. A newer area of scientific information sharing is through the sharing of research data sets. These forms of information sharing are considered primary sources. Once published, the information may be commented on by other experts in the field. In addition, these articles, reports, or other conference proceedings may be professionally indexed into a database by information professionals. These comments and rebuttals, as well as the index citations and metadata, would be considered secondary sources. Finally, once the evidence gathered becomes strong enough, the information in these primary and secondary sources can be summarized into encyclopedias and reference books. These are tertiary sources of information. Again, these are the three forms of literature you will encounter when doing research. Basic science and biomedical primary sources are documents or records that synthesize a study, experiment, trial, or other research project. These sources are often written by researchers who conduct the study, ran the experiment, and are often testing a hypothesis. Methodologies and results should be comprehensive and descriptive. This type of information is not pre-appraised, therefore you will be required to appraise the information for validity. Basic science and biomedical primary sources include original research or experiments, pilot studies, prospective studies, cohort studies, qualitative methods like surveys and interviews, lab notebooks, clinical trials and randomized controlled trials, and finally, dissertations and theses. Secondary sources list, summarize, compare, and/or evaluate primary sources of information. Secondary research tries to draw conclusions or present the current state of the literature and/or research. These sources will include bibliographies that direct you to the primary research reported in the resource. The advantage of secondary literature is that the information has already been appraised by other professionals, though you will always appraise the methods used for appraisal. Basic science and biomedical secondary sources include reviews and evidence syntheses. These are things like systematic reviews, scoping reviews, umbrella reviews, and meta-analyses. In addition, secondary resources include professional news sources like blogs and newspapers, practice guidelines and standards, point-of-care tools like UpToDate or DynaMed Plus, patient education information, government and legal resources like cdc.gov, books and monographs, and entries in nursing or medical encyclopedias. As for tertiary sources, their chief purpose is to summarize ideas and information from other well-known sources and authors. Tertiary sources do not always give credit to particular authors. A lot of the information found in these resources are known as facts. Basic science and biomedical tertiary sources include things like textbooks and reference books, fact books, encyclopedias, and almanacs. As you progress through your clinical career, you will use all of these resource types. You will learn what questions are best answered by primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. A popular secondary source. These are evidence syntheses and advanced reviews. Systematic reviews and meta-analyses are considered the top of the evidence pyramid, but there are things you should consider when using these resources. Systematic reviews are best at answering single questions, and they are more scientifically structured than traditional lit reviews. The methods are explicit and follow published reporting guidelines, and the quality and bias of every included article should be examined. Not all systematic reviews and meta-analyses are created equal. It is important to review the methods and understand when a search is not structured and replicable. In general, look for systematic reviews that provide full search strategies. This is essential for reproducibility and transparency. Report the date the searches were run. Cite any limiters or validated filters used. And report the number of results included and excluded and the reason for exclusion. This is actually a new requirement, and you will find this in the Prisma flow diagram. If you ever have questions, the Medical Center Library is always available to help you find the right resource for your project. You can request a consult or send us an email at miclib@uky.edu.